got this sketchbook that I made, and this is just out of some watercolor paper, and I think this is what is called a case-bound book. So that's what I'm going to do today, and I'm going to show you how I paint these leaves in a minute as well. So let's get cracking. Right, so here's my sketchbook. I made a little bit of a mistake with the edge because I used two different types of paper, so I've got to trim that up to tidy that up. And I put a spine cover on there with, I used a bit of an old material. So that's my sketchbook, and I painted some leaves on some, I'm a musician, so I've got quite a lot of bits of music floating around the house. So I'm using the sheet music that I'm painting on, but also to add a little bit of extra interest in the cover, I'm going to use an additional piece of paper. This is craft paper that I got off Amazon. It's really, really good, double-sided, and it's 12 by 12, so there's plenty there. Then I used a craft mat, cutting mat, and PVA glue, a ruler, a glue brush, and a little pot to put some glue in. Craft knife. This is a retractable one, so there's no danger of you cutting yourself on that one. And then I painted the leaves using a size 2 French quill brush. This is my favourite brush at the moment, and a bone folder. Right, I've got this pad of Zila artist watercolour paper. It's not the best quality, but I thought it would work out okay for a sketchbook. So what I need is to tear one sheet of paper out of this book. So I need one sheet of that, and I need to fold this in half. And to fold this in half, I need a bone folder and this scoring board. And now I need to cut it into two. Right, so I'm just going to use my scoring mat here, my cutting mat. Cut that. Right, okay, so now I've got my front and my back for my board. To paint the leaves, all I did was I had my quill brush, and these are just painted very simply. The thing I like about the quill brush is that you can press down quite heavy to get the broader shape of the leaf, but then it tapers to a very, very fine point, so you can finish off the leaves and give them a little bit more better shaping. The paper was very thin, but I managed to get a couple of layers of paint, or 2 or 3 actually, and it didn't buckle too much. But what I did do before I stuck these onto the card for the cover, I did iron and press them so that they were as flat as I could get them. For the green smaller leaves, I used exactly the same principle, just a bit smaller. I had the first layer of a paler green, and then I dropped in a slightly darker shade of green and let it just blend in to give it a nice bit of contrast. I was really pleased with the end result. Right, so we'll do what we do first of all. Before, we've just got some normal PVA glue and an old brush that I'm going to use for gluing it. So what I need to do, I need to just make sure I've got enough of the pattern on here. So I need my metal ruler and a pencil. I've done these two patterns. One is ever so slightly different than the other. I mean, I've not been too fussy about this, you know, I'm not laboured too much over it. I just wanted to get them covered so that I can use the sketchbook. So what we need to do is, in order to get nice corners, we just cut the corners off like that to stop that piece of paper moving around when I'm cutting. I'm just going to stick a piece of washi tape in there. Then we draw there and down here. Right. Yeah, be really careful using those. When you're not using them, put the blade away, because it's so easy to just cut your finger by mistake. So just be very careful when you're using this craft knife. And then we do right, so we've got our first cover ready. So just turn that over, turn it around the other side. So I'm just going to fold it over like this. I'm just going to do it roughly just to make sure that it fits okay and the pattern looks alright on the other side. Right, now we make a little score mark there. You see that there. And then we fold that over there like that. And then we do the same here. We make a little mark there and a little mark there. Fold that over. Right, let's have a look, see what this looks like. Right. Yeah, that looks pretty okay. It's a little slightly wonky, ever so slightly wonky, but I'm not going to worry about it. The leaves that are more important to me than anything else. Okay, right, so we've got it roughly in place here. So we need to get some glue. What we do is, I'm just going to glue directly onto here. So if I'm going to get a bit of kitchen roll here. Just going to lay that underneath that for a second. Don't want that to get on the any glue to get on the cutting mat. I made a tiny mistake when I glued the sections together, and then it was only later that I realised that the edges of the book weren't perfectly lined up, so I had to trim the edges, but it was easier to use another craft knife that I got, which is a lot sharper, which seemed to do the trick. So now it was the turn of the craft paper. So what I did was I needed 2 sheets of craft paper that were both exactly the same size, one for the front and one for the back. So I measured it so that I made sure that both sheets of the craft paper were the same size. I lined the top of the paper on the craft mat using the lines that are available on the craft mat, so I got a nice straight line, and then I glued it on to the back and the front of the book, making sure that it was nicely lined up so that it looked nice and neat when they were glued on. it's worth taking a bit of time over this because this process is quite time consuming. In between each process they have to be glued and then they have to be pressed and left to dry. So it is quite time consuming, but it's actually a very mindful, relaxing process. So it pays to take the time and do it properly. I would say I would give this at about an 8 out of 10. It was not 100% brilliant, but for my first attempt, I'm happy with that. So here I did exactly the same on the back, so that the craft paper edge lined up exactly with the craft paper edge on the front, so it looks nice and neat. And then I sandwiched both covers between a sheet of baking parchment, and then I left them overnight because they needed to be flattened, particularly because these were covered on watercolor paper and not on board. So they definitely need to be flattened overnight to make sure that they didn't curl up, because then that would have completely ruined it. Right, so here we have it, 3 homemade sketchbooks using music, sheet music, as the cover, and a little bit of craft paper and washi tape just to contrast the leaves on there. And I've picked up a few tips and things that I can do to improve. These would do to get me started, to get me kicked off, and I actually really enjoy it. It's a really, really mindful experience. And I've got this one, this is going to be my sunflower sketchbook. If you've got a particular subject that you want to really dive into in great depth, using a sketchbook is a good way of doing that, because then you can record your progress as you go along. And I've gotten a bit of an obsession with sunflowers, so this is going to be a good way for me to track my progress. But one thing that I have done to help me is I've made these a little pocket that I've made, and in the back I get these photographs that I've these are royalty-free images that I've downloaded from Pixabay and Pexels. I get them printed using free prints, I think it is. You just pay for the postage. So you can order, I don't know, anything up to about 20 photographs, and then you just pay the postage. This is a smaller sketchbook. I just use the same thickness of paper for this one, but somewhere along the line I didn't glue it down enough. So, but that's, you know, something to take on board for the next one. But this is my evening, I use this for my evening mindful sketching practice. So there we go. Hope you found that useful, interesting. If you want to do your own sketchbook, I definitely encourage it. It's just so much fun. And thanks for watching, and have an awesome day, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.